10 toughest actors in Hollywood history. They didn't just play tough guys on screen, they were tough guys in real life. The kind of men who could break your jaw with one punch and then finish filming the scene. Hollywood's most rugged stars weren't just acting when they portrayed heroes, fighters, and warriors. Many lived lives just as dramatic and dangerous as their on-screen personas. These were real men who brought authentic grit to the silver screen because they'd already lived it. Today we're going beyond the Hollywood publicity stories to reveal the shocking truth about the 10 toughest actors in cinema history. Men who brought real-world courage, strength, and resilience to their roles. What makes number 4 on our list particularly jaw-dropping is that studio executives tried desperately to keep his background a secret for fear audiences wouldn't believe it was possible. But before we dive into today's fascinating Hollywood history, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below, letting us know where you're tuning in from. I read every comment and love connecting with fellow classic film enthusiasts around the world. Let's begin our journey with perhaps the most legitimately tough actor in Hollywood history, a man whose real-life exploits would seem unbelievable if they weren't so thoroughly documented. 1. Audie Murphy. When you think of Hollywood's tough guys, you might picture John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, but the toughest man to ever appear on the silver screen was a baby-faced, 5 feet 5 inches actor who looked so unthreatening that directors often had trouble casting him in action roles. Yet Audie Murphy was, without question, the most legitimately dangerous man in Hollywood history. Before becoming an actor, Murphy was the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. At just 19 years old, he single-handedly held off an entire company of German soldiers for an hour in France, then led a successful counterattack while wounded and out of ammunition. For this incredible act of bravery, he received the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded by the United States government. But that was just one incident in Murphy's extraordinary military career. He earned every American Combat Award for valor available during his service, plus 5 decorations from France and Belgium. In total, Murphy received 28 military medals before his 21st birthday. His combat exploits included destroying multiple enemy tanks, repeatedly charging machine gun nests alone, and continuing to fight despite being wounded 3 times. Hollywood discovered Murphy when his heroics landed him on the cover of Life magazine. But directors initially struggled with casting him because he looked too young and innocent to be believable as a tough guy. Murphy's boyish appearance was so deceptive that when he arrived at the Hollywood studio for his first screen test, security guards initially refused to believe he was the war hero they'd been expecting. The irony is that Murphy, despite his unassuming appearance, was arguably more lethal than any other actor who ever stood before a camera. Military historians have estimated that Murphy personally killed between 240 and 300 enemy soldiers during his service, more than many entire military units. Perhaps most remarkable was Murphy's unflinching portrayal of himself in the autobiographical war film To Hell and Back. In one of Hollywood's most meta moments, the real-life war hero reenacted his own battlefield exploits, yet had to tone down some of his actual achievements because producers feared audiences would find the truth too far-fetched. Director Jesse Hibbs later revealed, "We had to leave out some of Audie's actual feats because no one would have believed them." Murphy suffered from severe PTSD after the war, sleeping with a loaded pistol under his pillow and battling nightmares that often left him waking up in a cold sweat, reaching for a weapon. His second wife, Wanda Hendricks, once said, "Audie had 2 completely different sides. In public, he was shy, soft-spoken, and gentle, but I've seen him wake up from nightmares and become someone I didn't recognize. A hardened killer with instincts that frightened me." Despite his inner demons, Murphy maintained remarkable self-control throughout his Hollywood career. Only once did his combat instincts surface publicly, when a businessman made threatening moves during a heated argument. According to witnesses, Murphy's reaction was so swift and threatening that the man later said, "I suddenly realized I was looking into the eyes of someone who could kill me without hesitation. It was the most terrifying moment of my life." What makes Murphy's story particularly remarkable is that unlike many on our list, he never sought to be a tough guy on screen. He actually preferred comedic and romantic roles where he could escape his violent past. Yet behind his gentle demeanor was a man who had faced more real combat and personally dispatched more enemies than perhaps any other professional actor in history. 2. Charles Bronson. Before he became one of cinema's most iconic tough guys, Charles Bronson lived a life of grinding hardship that would have broken most men. Born Charles Bakinski, he grew up in abject poverty as one of 15 children in a Pennsylvania coal mining family. By age 10, he was already working in the mines to help support his family, spending his formative years in the darkness hundreds of feet below ground. When speaking of his childhood, Bronson rarely elaborated, but once said simply, "I suppose I'm attracted to these roles because of my background. I was raised in violent neighborhoods and saw killing firsthand. We lived with death, starvation, and misery. What many don't realize is that the signature Bronson appearance, the weathered face, the suspicious squint, the perpetual grimace, wasn't an act at all. These were the physical manifestations of a man who had spent his early years breathing coal dust in near darkness and fighting for survival in violent neighborhoods where showing weakness meant you wouldn't last long. But Bronson's real trial by fire came during World War II. As a B-29 aerial gunner in the Army Air Forces, he flew 25 combat missions over Japan and received a Purple Heart for wounds sustained in battle. Colleagues from his military days described him as unnervingly calm under fire and the kind of man you wanted next to you when things went bad. After the war, Bronson's path to stardom was anything but easy. He worked over 50 different jobs, including onion picker, short order cook, and professional boxer, while pursuing small acting roles. Even after securing more regular acting work, directors often cast him as thugs, convicts, and Native Americans, despite his Lithuanian heritage, because of his naturally intimidating appearance. What separated Bronson from other tough guy actors was that while many performed their own stunts, Bronson performed his own fights, and he fought like someone who actually knew how violence worked. Film historian Eddie Muller noted, "When Bronson throws a punch on screen, it doesn't look choreographed. It looks like a man who has been in real fights and knows how to hurt someone efficiently." His co-stars often commented on his surprising physical strength. Despite standing only 5 feet 9 inches, Bronson maintained the powerful build of a former laborer and boxer. Jan Michael Vincent, who worked with him on The Mechanic, recalled, "During a scene where he was supposed to just grab my shirt, I could feel the incredible strength in his hands. This wasn't an actor pretending to be strong. This was genuine power developed through years of hard labor." Perhaps most telling about Bronson's authentic toughness was his response to death threats from the mafia after his portrayal of vigilante Paul Kersey in Death Wish. While the studio offered him bodyguards, Bronson reportedly declined, saying simply, "I've lived too long and been through too much to worry about people like that." Unlike other stars who might have sought protection or publicity from such threats, Bronson's response demonstrated the quiet confidence of a man who had faced far worse dangers. Director Michael Winner, who worked with Bronson on numerous films, once said, "Charles doesn't act tough. He simply is tough. There's a substantial difference. Most actors playing tough guys are gentle souls playing a role. Bronson had an authentic hardness that came from a life of genuine struggle and danger. You can't fake that kind of authenticity." 3. Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin didn't just play intimidating characters. He was precisely the kind of dangerous man he often portrayed on screen. Before he became one of Hollywood's most recognizable tough guys, Marvin served as a Marine during World War II, where he participated in some of the bloodiest fighting in the Pacific Theater. As a private first class with the 4th Marine Division, Marvin fought in the Battle of Saipan in 1944, where he was severely wounded by machine gun fire that severed his sciatic nerve. The injury hospitalized him for a year and left him with a permanent limp that he disguised throughout his acting career. For his service and injuries, Marvin received the Purple Heart Medal, though he rarely spoke about his military experiences in detail. When he did discuss his time in combat, Marvin was bracingly honest about its horrors. Unlike some actor veterans who romanticized their service, he once said, "I was a Marine sniper in the Pacific. I got shot in the ass and sent home. That's the truth." Any man who says he enjoyed combat is either a liar or a fool. This authenticity made Marvin uniquely qualified to portray violence on screen. Director John Boorman, who worked with Marvin on Point Blank, noted, "Lee understood violence in a way most actors never will. When he portrayed a violent man, there was a truth to it that came from having seen men kill and be killed. He knew how real violence worked, swift, ugly, and without the dramatics you usually see in film." Marvin's military background gave him a perspective on screen violence that other actors lacked. In films like The Dirty Dozen and The Killers, his portrayal of violent men had a chilling authenticity precisely because he wasn't playing at being dangerous. He was drawing on real experiences from combat. His fellow actors often found themselves intimidated by Marvin both on and off screen. James Coburn, himself known for tough guy roles, once said, "When Lee walked onto a set, there was an immediate shift in the atmosphere. Everyone straightened up a bit. There was something genuinely dangerous about him that you couldn't quite put your finger on, but you definitely felt it." Perhaps the most telling indicator of Marvin's authentic toughness was his infamous bar fight with an entire team of lumberjacks while filming in Oregon. According to multiple witnesses, Marvin, well into his 40s at the time, held his own against several much younger men until the state police arrived. The next day, he showed up to set on time, sporting bruises, but refusing medical attention or any schedule adjustments.